Welcome to another episode of Remember the Great Sports, autograph tips and discussion. What I want to talk about today is how long should you use a Sharpie? This is something that you never actually know when the time comes when you're supposed to, retire a Sharpie. I'm just trying to give you some tips, maybe some pointers of when you probably should decide to move on to the next Sharpie. Sometimes you are autographing and simple factors as the weather, humidity, cold can affect how well a Sharpie takes to the item that you're getting signed. Two cards that I'm going to share with you here are, a former minor leaguer that I got back years ago. You can see the Sharpies starting to streak a little bit. So obviously after I had this card signed, that would be when, try to show a little closer look there. Obviously that would be when I would switch Sharpies. I used to also collect signatures with fine point Sharpies, and this is a red one which I don't use for autographs, I just had laying around the house. But I used to use fine point blue Sharpies, and my Von Hayes autograph here that I got in person, and again this was like probably 15 years ago, as you can tell isn't even existent. Now I remember getting him to sign this card, and I've seen him since and got him to sign other cards, but it was a cold night. He came walking out of the clubhouse, and he grabbed my pen and signed, and he walked off, little not knowing what the signature looked like. It was dark out, it was cold out, and I stood out there and waited for him, and that was the result of what I had. Well, obviously, I probably threw my Sharpie across the parking lot after I got that autograph and moved on to the next one. I since then have decided to move away from the fine point Sharpies only because they're a little harder and a little more expensive to come by. And number two, it just doesn't seem like the shelf life is as long with a fine point Sharpie as it is with a blue one. So when do you know when to stop? I personally, with blue Sharpies, stop when I see immediately two things. One, streaking, like I just showed you on the last card, or secondly, the tip is the key. And if you look closely to this one that I had off camera, you can see that the tip is very, very worn off on this one. Now, I wouldn't use this pen after I saw that. This is probably a pen I've had laying around the house that I've used to write, various things with the Sharpie. But as compared to a newer Sharpie, you can clearly see the difference in the point on that Sharpie. So I highly recommend, if you're having a Sharpie like this in your hand, that you maybe want to consider upgrading. And that's, pretty simple to do. I've found that the gold and the silver Sharpies have an extremely short lifespan, meaning once you pop the cap on this, it's like it starts drying out. That's the best way I can describe it. And I typically try to find like a 4-pack of these, so that way if I absolutely need to get something signed in a silver Sharpie, I have a brand new one ready to go to get signed. Now, why would you need a silver Sharpie? Well, sometimes there are cards, there are photos, there are whatever, programs, yearbooks, whatever, that, or even baseball bats, sometimes the black bats, sometimes they're so dark that a blue or black Sharpie won't show up. Very rarely do I get something in silver signed, but for example, I remember getting a team bat signed that was black ash or whatever, and it was totally black. I mean, obviously a blue or a black Sharpie wouldn't show up, so I went and purchased a silver Sharpie and got the team bat signed, and that bat actually is a bat signed by none other than Mike Moustakas and Salvador Perez. So it was a low-A minor league baseball affiliate that at the time Salvi Perez wasn't anybody, and Moustakas was the first round pick, so you knew who he was. But I got them to sign a bat in silver Sharpie. So I go back to a silver Sharpie is probably the least dependable Sharpie that can be in your collection. I don't get too many things signed outside of blue, so others maybe can chime in of a better solution than using a silver Sharpie. Maybe there's some paint pens or different type of pens out there for better solutions than a silver Sharpie. The red Sharpie I just had laying around. I don't use that at all for autographing. Another tip that I give people is, well, how many Sharpies do you carry with you? Well, to give you an example, you never can have more than enough, is the way I look at it. I just simply put all my pins in a simple Ziploc bag and I throw them in my book bag. I sometimes keep a Sharpie box like so in my bag, so that way I know if they're in this box, they're brand new and never been used. I do that in various forms. So as you can see, I've got roughly four in there that have never been used before. So I'll definitely break those in. And what these are typically what I carry with me at the stadium in my bag. Now, one of the things that I've learned to do, and this is again after 20 years of autograph collecting in person, one of the things that I like to do whenever I retire a Sharpie is, I'm going to hold this up as close as I can, and is I put a piece of tape around the Sharpie. Now when I put that piece of tape on there, that means I have retired this Sharpie. So what I do is when I go into a stadium or I'm outside at an event or anything like that, I usually put one or two of these in my pocket. That way if the athlete comes out or the celebrity or whatever comes out and says, hey, can I use your pen? I say, no, but you can use this pen. And I give them an old Sharpie to sign other people's stuff with, because the quickest way to dull the tip on the end of your Sharpie is have a baseball player grab it and sign anything and everything that he sees in sight. This would include your, t-shirts and hats and, all of the things that, typically kids, come to the stadium with. Over time, I've learned that there's no point in talking to people at the stadium and saying, I'm not giving you my Sharpie, I just give them my Sharpie. If I never see that Sharpie again, that's fine. That way I don't seem like a jerk to somebody, nor do I have a parent all furious at me because, sometimes when you're organized, it's like expected of you to help everybody else out. And it's not that I don't mind helping people out. It's just when you get the attitude from the parents with their kids that it's expected of you. I mean, what those parents may not understand is these cost $1 a piece. I mean, most likely if you're paying to get into a ball game or something like that, you have an extra $1 that you could give to your kid to go buy a Sharpie. I mean, it's not the end of the world. So to avoid frustration, people getting angry at me, anything like that, if somebody says, hey, can I borrow your Sharpie? I say, no, you can't borrow that one, but you can borrow this one. And I always ask for it back, but sometimes I don't get it back, which is totally fine. I don't mind helping out kids, identifying players or helping them out, getting their stuff signed. I've seen some crazy things signed at stadiums before. Maybe I'll throw together a video of some of the weirdest things I've ever seen at the stadium signed, and maybe we can have a comment, video on that. And that's just down the road. But the bottom line is this may be a video that's not too interesting to a long-time veteran collector with autographs. But again, if you're just getting into autograph collecting, These are my tips and my recommendations to you using Sharpies. I've already talked about what color Sharpie is my preference. Again, it's a preference of whoever's getting the autograph is what it comes down to. I hope this video has been helpful. I hope that some of the things that you know, take from this video are helpful to you, you know, whether you're autographing in person or sending through the mail and including a Sharpie. Please comment below if you have any tips or discussions that maybe I'm overlooking. One of the things that I want to point out is even though I've been doing this for over 20 years, doesn't mean that I'm doing it right. So if there's something that I'm overlooking and you want to point out, definitely feel free to share that in the comments below.